Hi, it's Rachel. I'm doing my Sunday morning Unwitnessing, and this is what my car looks like. Hope you can see that. It says avoid normal contact with your disfellowshipped children, because that's what Jesus would do, right? Can you see the Kingdom Hall there? So hopefully that's readable. I had to split the word contact up, so I hope they can still read it. Anyway, on this side I've got love, not shun. Car's kind of steaming up a little bit because we're finally getting some rain and my breathing is steaming up the car. So let's put this down here. Okay, I still look haggard and yuck. Never mind. I thought I might just go through the Watchtower study that they're doing later on this morning from the October 2017 Watchtower. Hang on, I'm just going to lock my doors. You just never know, do you? The truth brings not peace but a sword, and I've just printed it off from jw.org. So of course this makes out that it's always Jehovah's Witnesses that are the peaceable ones, and the ones that do all the opposing are the unbelievers or the non-witnesses, which we know is far from the truth. That should be how it is. If you look at what the scriptures say, there is I can't remember in which gospel account it is in, but I think it was Jesus speaking, saying that if you're in a marriage where you're married to an unbeliever, if they're willing to stay with you, then you stay with them. However, if they want to leave you, then you allow them to leave. So it's up to the unbelieving mate as to what they do. Of course, it would be different if there was actual abuse or anything involved. But anyway, so I'll just have a look at some of the paragraphs in this article. Paragraph 2. It says that the greatest threat to our peace may come from unbelieving relatives. Some might ridicule our beliefs, accuse us of dividing the family, or threaten to disown us unless we give up our faith. So of course this is speaking from the JW perspective. You know, they might get their beliefs ridiculed, be accused of dividing the family, or threatened to be disowned. And that is true in some cases. Yeah, a lot of witnesses have had to put up with opposition from a mate or family, but it also works the other way around too. Jehovah's Witnesses also ridicule the beliefs of others, accuse them of dividing the family, and threaten to disown them. So, especially if their spouse was a Jehovah's Witness and has now left the faith, perhaps becoming a Christian, they may feel they're a born-again Christian, or perhaps they're now agnostics or atheists. The Jehovah's Witness can ridicule their beliefs too, and accuse them of dividing the family and threaten them. And there are so many experiences of exactly this happening on Facebook and the support groups, where the Jehovah's Witness spouse is the one doing all the threatening. It could be that their unbelieving mate, who's a former witness, is quite happy to continue in their otherwise happy marriage, allowing the witness to carry on attending meetings and going out in the ministry, but it's the witness one that is doing the opposing and threatening. And there have been many instances of, it seems to be wives in particular, who will concoct some kind of reason, like spiritual endangerment or something, and leave their unbelieving husband. And then we see custody battles, with the children involved, and it gets very messy and very nasty. Also, you think, and I mentioned it in a video I made yesterday, that the literature always paints former witnesses who either become unbelievers or adopt some other kind of Christian belief system. They are accused of being apostates, and that word apostate, that label, really brings about a phobic kind of paranoia in the witness. They become very unreasonable when they think of an apostate because of what the governing body say about them. You can't do better than that talk that was given at the 2013 District Convention about human apostates, where they were very graphically depicted as Satan's helpers in his evil kitchen, cooking up wicked reasonings and seasoning them with their poisonous lies. So, all this imagery of cauldrons bubbling and poison, and, they talked about infection, and at the brother that gave the talk at the convention I attended talked about, lemons and, you want to, sour and distasteful, and he also talked about poisonous mushrooms, that the mushroom can look good and tasty and look like a normal mushroom, but it could be a poisonous one and make you very crook. And so he's trying to say that apostates might look like normal people, but really, they're poisonous and devious and insincere and predatory, and they're kidnappers. And, the list went on in the description. So how on earth is a Jehovah's Witness spouse married to one of these apostates? How are they supposed to carry on a normal, peaceable relationship? So these women that leave their now unbelieving ex-witness husband, they don't want to live with someone that's described in that manner by the governing body. It's so bad. Anyway, moving along, we'll be here all day if I take that long on each paragraph. Paragraph 3 says this opposition could affect peaceful relations among family members. Yes, so in many of these marriages where one spouse becomes an ex-witness, their relationship has otherwise been peaceful, but now the relationship changes because one of them has become an ex-witness. And often, like I said, it's due to the reaction of the witness. Now, paragraph 4, the last sentence there, it said Jesus' motive was to proclaim God's message of truth, not to damage relationships. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Given that later on they talk about avoiding normal contact with disfellowshipped family members. Okay, so if that's not damaging relationships, what is? See, still holding faithfully to Christ's teachings would be challenging if one's close friends or family members rejected the truth. There you go, the truth again, very culty kind of word to use. And of course, we know that when they say the truth, we're talking about the interpretation of the organisation, the interpretation of these men in Bethel and headquarters in New York. Or perhaps I should say the actual writers of the material, because the governing body doesn't actually write all the articles that are going to be studied. Okay. Paragraph 5. In order to prove worthy of the Christ, his disciples have had to endure ridicule or even alienation from their families. Yes, and that is true for Jehovah's Witnesses. Some of them have had to endure ridicule and alienation from their families caused by their families. However, it goes the other way as well, doesn't it? For those of us who were formerly witnesses and who made a conscientious decision to follow the Christ rather than to follow the dictates of men, we have had to endure ridicule and alienation from our families. Fortunately, I was not alienated from my family when I was disfellowshipped because I didn't have any family who were witnesses. But of course, most witnesses, most ex-witnesses do have JW family. So we certainly have to endure ridicule as well. Yeah. Okay. I kind of mentioned that a little bit in the video I made yesterday, where I mentioned that I had heard rumours that witnesses were saying that I was crazy, you know, in La La Land, because of my car unwitnessing, I suppose, and because I challenge them at the, well, I don't challenge them, but when I see them at the carts in town, I will either speak to them or I will just hold up my little sign. It's I'll show you. I just sit near them with this and just hold it up so people walking by can see it, and usually that makes the witnesses pack up their stuff pretty pronto and move on. So that makes me crazy, apparently. Okay, so yes, I get ridiculed for standing up for what I believe in my heart and in my conscience for what is right. Now, paragraph 6. We must also realise that Satan will try to use our affection for our family to break our integrity. Yeah, therefore cut off your affection for your family. And it just makes me think of that verse in 2 Timothy 3, 1-5. You know, it talks about the lack of natural affection. And certainly that is something that witnesses have mastered when it comes to shunning and the way they think about their former friends and family members who have left the organisation. They don't even have to have been disfellowshipped or disassociated. They may have just stopped going to the meetings or stopped going out in the field service, and they find that affection that was once there has dried up. Paragraph 7, it says, if you have an unbelieving mate, you may experience more than the usual stress and anxiety in your marriage. Well, that's certainly true of both mates. Oftentimes it's the unbelieving mate that gets the stress and anxiety because they may have to deal with threats from the witness mate, especially if they were a witness. Like, if you don't come to the meetings anymore, then I'm going to, well, you know, I don't know, stop something. Your mate's present unwillingness to follow Christ is not in itself a valid reason for separation or divorce. However, separation and divorce happens all the time, initiated by witnesses themselves whose spouse doesn't share their beliefs, and especially so if they were formerly a witness and are now described as an apostate. There are many experiences online of sisters who have even been encouraged by the elders to separate from their apostate husbands. It's a tremendous amount of pressure on them, especially if they find nothing wrong with their marital relationship, and the husband might be a great husband, a great father, and a good provider. Yet they are pressured into feeling that they must separate from the apostate. It's not very nice. Okay, so paragraph 9. It says, but what if your mate does not follow the Bible's high standard of conduct? Set the example by honouring your mate. Focus on his or her good qualities and express appreciation for your mate. Avoid saying negative things about your mate in front of your children. Instead, explain to them that each person must choose whether to serve Jehovah. The children's good conduct might help to draw the unbelieving parent to true worship. Anyway, so talks about honouring your mate and focusing on their good qualities and showing appreciation, and avoid saying negative things about them. Of course, that's the case, except if you are a former Jehovah's Witness, if you are an ex-witness. Then it seems they are exempt from having to do these things. Okay, paragraph 10. The only thing I've underlined in this paragraph is the last sentence which says, her children must eventually make their own decision regarding worship. And I just thought, well, how many children really do make their own decision, especially with the governing body encouraging and praising the baptism of children, 10 years old and younger. How can they truly be informed at that age in order to make their own decision? Many children are just getting baptised to please mum and dad. It will make them happy. It makes them look good. It's what's expected. It's what they hear at the meetings. And on jw.org, there's a cartoon there. Caleb, was it? No, I don't think it is a Caleb and Sophia one, but it's one of the cartoons which shows children, fairly young children getting baptised. So they see that is an expectation that's encouraged. So they, in most cases, I would say, from what I gather, seeing the experiences of those on the Facebook support groups, the decision wasn't really their own. And of course, we're all familiar with Anthony Morris, who's a member of the governing body, who suggested to parents that if their children had reached the age of 16 and they weren't baptised, to withhold their driver's licence from them. He said if they're mature enough to drive a car, then they're mature enough to be baptised. So a little bit of blackmail going on there, and he encouraged that. And I think David Splain at one point said that it was quite appropriate to force your children to go to the meetings. Great. So what did they say again there? Children must eventually make their own decision. Okay, going to paragraph 12, says to have empathy for unbelieving relatives. While we may be overjoyed about the Bible truths we have learned, our relatives may mistakenly believe that we have been tricked or become part of a cult. Oh dear. Says we should show empathy by trying to see things from their viewpoint and by listening carefully to discern their real concerns. How interesting is that? Okay, so what if this unbelieving relative has been seeing some stuff on the internet, has perhaps been reading about the Australian Royal Commission and the $66 million class action lawsuit filed against the Watchtower in Canada for child sexual abuse victims. They read about people, women dying after childbirth because they've refused a blood transfusion after bleeding heavily. They may have found out about the false predictions. I will avoid saying the word prophecy because JWs get very upset about that. the false predictions, for example, 1975, and I mean, we've got 1914, 1915, 1925, 1942, I think. There's probably some others as well. You know, what if they bring these things up? Well, it says we should show empathy by trying to see things from their viewpoint and by listening carefully to discern their real concerns. So, I wonder how many witnesses actually do that. Why do they actually say to their relative, well, why do you say that we're a cult? What makes you think we're a cult? And instead of jumping in, we're not a cult, blah, 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 blah. Well, have you been visiting apostate websites? Blah, blah, blah. You can't believe everything you read on the internet, blah, blah, you know how they go on. It says to listen carefully and discern their real concerns. Certainly don't go accusing them of being an apostate, which frequently happens. A witness or just anybody who approaches, like I've seen it. I've seen videos of people who go up to the witnesses at their carts and ask some questions about anything that's kind of negative, like the child sexual abuse, and they get outright accused of being an apostate. And the person doesn't even know what that is. So anything negative or critical is connected with apostates instantly. It's disregarded, it's unreliable. So any kind of criticism gets shut down completely. So I'd really like to see how witnesses apply this paragraph to listen to the viewpoint and discern their real concerns. They've been trained to shut down. So how can they do this? I don't know. Okay, paragraph 13, I've underlined, try not to argue about all their false religious ideas. The assumption made that what other Christians believe is false, and that what Jehovah's Witnesses have is the truth. It's so black and white with them, when in fact, when you really look at the Bible and listen and have empathy and listen to what other people are saying, you find that it's actually a lot of grey area, that it's not that easy to interpret the Bible really. And Jehovah's Witnesses are quite good at arguing about religion, especially with people they know, family and that. They might be more polite in the ministry, but they're just as good at arguing as anyone else. Okay, in paragraph 14 it talks about maintaining fine conduct to give a good witness to your family, unbelieving family. And it says, let your relatives see that Jehovah's Witnesses enjoy happy marriages, look after their children, and live a clean, moral, and fulfilling life. So there's that putting on the appearances of being good, or being better or superior in some way to everybody else, when the reality isn't that. There are a lot of very miserable marriages in the organisation, and there are a lot of separations and a lot of divorces in the organisation. There are children that are neglected, children that must suffer sometimes discipline that is not generally accepted in the world today, good hiding. And sometimes parents are so busy with their theocratic responsibilities, like mums may be regular pioneering and things like that, dad may be an elder, that their children are neglected. And talks here about a clean, moral and fulfilling life. Well, I don't think they're any more clean or moral than a good, any other cross-section of society. So anyway, it's all about putting on that front to attract people to the truth. Putting on that kingdom smile, you know, even when you feel real bleh. Okay. I will just skip over to the subheading, if a family member leaves Jehovah. In paragraph 20 it says, if you see evidence that a close family member is having a change of heart, you could pray that he or she gain strength from the scriptures and respond to Jehovah's appeal, return to me. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, if you're avoiding them, how would you see the evidence that they're having a change of heart? I guess that would only be if they turned up at the meetings, because you're not having any contact with them, so how would you know? Paragraph 21. Jesus said that if we were to put any human before him, we would not be worthy of him. And as soon as I read that, I thought, oh my goodness. Jehovah's Witnesses have the governing body, before them, and in fact in between them and Jesus. So, and they do look to the governing body for all their direction, and will go along with it even if it conflicts with what Jesus would have taught. And really, that's, you know, the sign that I have on my car, where the governing body have instructed that Jehovah's Witnesses avoid all normal contact with disfellowshipped family members. That's what they say. But did Jesus ever say anything like that? Oh yeah, my sign, it goes on to say, so it says, avoid contact with disfellowshipped children, because that's what Jesus would do, right? So that's what I've got written on there. I mean, who did Jesus ever shun? There's no instance in the Bible where he shunned anyone. He even spoke to Satan directly. He treated everyone with dignity and respect and empathy. I mean, of course, he could see into the heart and read the heart of a person. So this instruction to shun as a no contact, which is not scriptural, it's just not scriptural. That comes from the governing body, and this is what Jehovah's Witnesses follow. So they are putting humans before Jesus, and Jesus said, if you do that, then you'd not be worthy of him. So that's a bit of a warning, isn't it, for witnesses? Yeah, I skipped paragraph 19 is where it actually says, respect the discipline of Jehovah. His arrangement can bring the best long-term outcome for all, including the wrongdoer, even though the immediate effect is painful. Well, it's much more than the immediate effect, isn't it? If someone's going to be shunned for the rest of their life because they don't want to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses, then the effect is not immediate, it's lasting, it's a lasting effect. For example, Jehovah instructs us to stop keeping company with unrepentant wrongdoers. Despite our pain of heart, we must avoid normal contact with a disfellowshipped family member by telephone, text messages, letters, emails, or social media. Now, this is an interesting point. If you look in the Shepherd the Flock of God book, that is the Secret Elders Manual, and you look up about speaking with disfellowshipped people, because you can be disfellowshipped if you continue to associate with disfellowshipped people, except if you are a family, a relative of that person. So it seems that if you are actually associating with a disfellowshipped family member, according to the Shepherding the Flock of God book, you can't be disfellowshipped for that. And if you can't be disfellowshipped for that, then there is no scriptural backing for that. Yet here we have these men demanding that witnesses avoid normal contact with their disfellowshipped family members. So, if that's not putting men before Christ, then what is? It's terrible. Another thing, something I would like to ask witnesses is this phrase, stop keeping company or stop associating. If you look in the Christian Greek scriptures, you will see that the same Greek word is used in those verses in 1 Corinthians 5:11-13, as is used in some other, I can't remember where it is at the moment, in the verses that are used for marking. In those verses, it says to stop associating or stop mixing with the person that's to be marked, and it says to go on admonishing them as a brother. So in those verses, they say that it just means to sort of kind of limit, keep an eye on the person, mark them, limit your association with them. Whereas in the other verses in 1 Corinthians, they say it means to completely shun, to have absolutely no contact with whatsoever. So, I mean, how can it mean both of those things? So I would like witnesses to try and explain that to me. Why on the one hand it means completely shun, and on the other hand it means just to keep an eye on them and limit your association, but otherwise keep on admonishing them as a brother. So I think witnesses should give serious thought to that, given that when they do completely shun people, some of them commit suicide. So could these ones who do the shunning, possibly have blood on their hands? Could they be found blood guilty by Jehovah if they continue to shun? Anyway, I think I've spoken enough about this Watchtower article. I've pretty much gone through the most interesting bits that I found, and it would kind of be good to be in the Kingdom Hall to hear the answers that they give, but they'll just parrot them off like they always do without much thought. Anyway, so I hope someone has taken notice of my sign. I can only do what I can do. So I'll leave that for now. See ya.